Is Jalen Hurts the most underrated quarterback in the NFL? Despite leading the Philadelphia Eagles to 2 Super Bowl appearances in just 4 years as a starter, his name is often overlooked in discussions about the league's elite signal callers. Analysts and fans alike debate the rankings of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. Yet Hurts, who has consistently demonstrated leadership, poise, and an ability to win on the biggest stages, rarely gets the same level of recognition. Hurts' journey to NFL stardom has been anything but conventional. From his early days as a standout high school prospect in Texas to his time at Alabama and Oklahoma, he has faced skepticism at every turn. He was benched in the biggest game of his college career, questioned as an NFL prospect, and doubted as a franchise quarterback. But each time, he has responded the same way, with unwavering resilience, tireless work ethic, and a quiet confidence that has fueled his rise. In Philadelphia, he has transformed the Eagles into perennial contenders, redefining what it means to be a modern dual-threat quarterback. His ability to carve up defenses with both his arm and his legs makes him one of the most dangerous weapons in the league. His leadership is undeniable. Teammates and coaches speak of his relentless preparation, his even-keeled demeanor, and his ability to inspire those around him. Still, for all his accomplishments, there remains a lingering question. What more does Jalen Hurts need to do to silence the doubters and cement himself among the NFL's best? Today, we take a deep dive into Hurts' incredible journey, one marked by adversity, perseverance, and a burning desire to prove himself at every step. We'll explore the defining moments of his career, the obstacles he has overcome, and why he may be one of the most disrespected quarterbacks in the league today. If history has taught us anything, it's that counting out Jalen Hurts has always been a mistake. So, why are people still doing it? Born on August 7, 1998, in Houston, Texas, Jalen Hurts grew up in the football-driven town of Channelview, where the sport was more than just a pastime. It was a way of life. Football wasn't just something he played. It was ingrained in his family. His father, Jaylen Hurts, was a respected high school football coach, and his older brother, Jaylen Jr., was also a quarterback. From an early age, Jalen was immersed in the game, learning its intricacies by watching film with his father, absorbing playbooks like a seasoned veteran, and spending countless hours refining his skills on the same practice field where his father coached. The Hurts household operated on discipline and an unshakable work ethic. Excuses didn't exist, only results. Every morning, long before most kids his age even rolled out of bed, Jalen was already grinding. Whether it was running extra drills, lifting weights, or breaking down defenses on film, he had a relentless desire to get better. That drive set him apart early on. By the time he entered Channelview High School, it was clear he wasn't just another young player with potential. He was a force to be reckoned with. As a freshman, Hurts immediately made an impression with his leadership and physicality. While most quarterbacks focused solely on throwing mechanics, he was already showcasing his dual-threat ability, outrunning defenders and breaking tackles with surprising strength. His weightlifting numbers were unheard of for a quarterback. By the time he was a junior, he was squatting over 500 pounds, a feat that rivaled linemen. Coaches and teammates often found him in the weight room long before practice started and staying late to fine-tune his footwork and passing mechanics. Hurts took over as the starting quarterback in his sophomore year and quickly turned heads with his performance. He led Channelview to multiple deep playoff runs, solidifying himself as one of the most exciting prospects in Texas. By the time he graduated, his stats were staggering. Nearly 2,400 passing yards and 26 touchdowns, along with over 1,400 rushing yards and 25 scores on the ground. His ability to take over games, whether with his arm or his legs, made him a nightmare for opposing defenses. Despite his impressive resume, some major college programs still had doubts. Many saw him as more of an athlete than a true quarterback, questioning whether he had the passing mechanics and decision-making to succeed at the next level. The same narrative that would follow him throughout his career had already begun. He wasn't polished enough. He wasn't accurate enough. He wasn't a traditional quarterback. But if there was one thing Jalen Hurts thrived on, it was proving people wrong. Rather than letting the skepticism shake him, he used it as fuel. He knew his journey wouldn't be easy, but he had the talent, the mindset, and the work ethic to overcome any obstacle. His next challenge? The leap to college football, where he would once again have to fight for respect. When Jalen Hurts arrived at Alabama in 2016, he stepped into one of the most competitive environments in college football. Under head coach Nick Saban, Alabama was a powerhouse program with a championship-or-bust mentality, and as a true freshman, Hurts was expected to wait his turn behind more experienced quarterbacks. Blake Barnett had been named the starter going into the season, and most assumed Hurts would spend his first year learning from the sidelines. However, it didn't take long for Hurts to make his mark. In Alabama's season opener against USC, Barnett struggled early, and Saban made the bold decision to insert Hurts into the game. The freshman immediately showed flashes of brilliance, throwing 2 touchdowns and rushing for 2 more. From that moment on, he took control of Alabama's offense and never looked back. By the end of the season, he had established himself as one of the most electrifying quarterbacks in the country. Hurts' freshman year was nothing short of spectacular. He threw for 2,780 yards and 23 touchdowns, while adding another 954 yards and 13 scores on the ground. His ability to extend plays and break down defenses with both his arm and legs gave Alabama an entirely new offensive dynamic. He became the first true freshman to start at quarterback for the Crimson Tide in over 30 years, and his impact was immediate. Under his leadership, Alabama stormed through the regular season undefeated at 12-0, earning the top seed in the college football playoff. He was named SEC Freshman of the Year and SEC Offensive Player of the Year, breaking school records along the way. However, his first taste of championship football ended in heartbreak. In the 2017 National Championship game against Clemson, Hurts struggled to find a rhythm against an elite defense. He completed just 13 of 31 passes for 131 yards, though he did rush for a critical touchdown that gave Alabama the lead late in the fourth quarter. But with just 1 second left on the clock, Clemson scored the game-winning touchdown, crushing Alabama's title hopes. The loss was devastating for Hurts, but it would become a defining moment in his growth as a quarterback. The following season, Hurts returned as Alabama's starter and continued to win, but his passing numbers dipped slightly, fueling criticism that he relied too much on his running ability. The biggest blow came in the Iron Bowl, where Alabama lost to Auburn, forcing them to rely on an at-large bid to make the college football playoff. Still, the Crimson Tide reached the national championship game once again, this time against Georgia. It was in that title game where Hurts faced the biggest challenge of his career. Alabama's offense sputtered in the first half, and Hurts completed just 3 of 8 passes for 21 yards. At halftime, Saban made a shocking decision. He benched Hurts in favor of true freshman Tua Tagovailoa. The move paid off as Tagovailoa led Alabama to a thrilling comeback win, securing the national championship. For Hurts, the moment was humiliating. He had led Alabama to back-to-back national title games, yet in the biggest moment, he was replaced. Many assumed he would transfer immediately, but instead of leaving, Hurts made a different choice. He stayed. Rather than sulking or demanding a starting role elsewhere, he embraced his new position as the backup, choosing to improve his skills while supporting the team. His patience and perseverance paid off in the 2018 SEC championship game. When Tagovailoa suffered an injury, Hurts was called upon in the second half, with Alabama trailing. In a storybook moment, he led the Crimson Tide to a dramatic comeback victory, throwing for 1 touchdown and rushing for another. It was redemption in its purest form. The quarterback who had been benched on the biggest stage had just saved Alabama's championship hopes. Despite proving his worth once again, Hurts knew his time at Alabama was coming to an end. With Tagovailoa firmly entrenched as the starter, Hurts made the decision to transfer for his final college season. But rather than viewing it as an ending, he saw it as a new beginning, one that would take him to the University of Oklahoma, where he would rewrite his own legacy. After 3 years at Alabama, Jalen Hurts faced a difficult decision. He had proven himself as a winner, leading the Crimson Tide to multiple national championship appearances, but after losing his starting job to Tua Tagovailoa, he knew he needed a fresh start. With 1 year of college eligibility remaining and a desire to showcase his growth as a passer, Hurts entered the transfer portal. Despite interest from several top programs, he ultimately chose the University of Oklahoma. a school that had recently produced two consecutive Heisman Trophy-winning quarterbacks in Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, both of whom had gone on to be #1 overall picks in the NFL draft. Under head coach Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma had developed a reputation as a quarterback-friendly system, and Hurts saw it as the perfect place to refine his game and prove that he was more than just a run-first quarterback. The transition to Oklahoma was seamless. From the moment Hurts stepped onto the field, he played with a level of confidence and command that silenced any remaining doubters. In his first game as a Sooner, he put up staggering numbers, throwing for 332 yards and 3 touchdowns, while rushing for 176 yards and 3 more scores. It was a statement performance, and it set the tone for what would be an incredible season. Hurts quickly became one of the most electrifying players in college football. Over the course of the 2019 season, he threw for 3,851 yards, 32 touchdowns, and just 8 interceptions while completing an impressive 69.7% of his passes, by far the highest mark of his career. But what truly set him apart was his dual-threat ability. He rushed for 1,298 yards and 20 touchdowns, making him the only player in Oklahoma history to account for 50 total touchdowns in a single season. His total yardage surpassed 5,100, and his playmaking ability kept the Sooners' offense firing on all cylinders. Under Hurts' leadership, Oklahoma finished the regular season with an 11-1 record, securing a spot in the Big 12 championship game. Facing Baylor in a high-stakes rematch, Hurts delivered another clutch performance, throwing for 287 yards and rushing for 38 more to lead the Sooners to a thrilling overtime victory. With the win, Oklahoma claimed its 5th consecutive Big 12 title and punched its ticket to the college football playoff. Despite his incredible season, Hurts finished second in the Heisman Trophy voting behind LSU quarterback Joe Burrow, who was in the midst of one of the greatest individual seasons in college football history. While Hurts had put up remarkable numbers, Burrow's record-breaking campaign, including an undefeated season and an SEC championship, proved too much to overcome in the race for college football's most prestigious award. Hurts' final college game came in the college football playoff semifinal against Burrow and LSU. Unfortunately for Oklahoma, they ran into a juggernaut. Burrow threw for 7 touchdowns in the first half alone, and the Sooners were overwhelmed, losing 63-28. While it was a tough way to end his college career, the loss did little to diminish what Hurts had accomplished in just one season at Oklahoma. He had proven himself as an elite quarterback, silencing critics who once doubted his ability to thrive in a pass-heavy offense. Beyond his on-field success, Hurts also excelled academically, earning his master's degree while at Oklahoma, an impressive achievement for a student-athlete balancing the demands of elite competition. By the time he declared for the 2020 NFL Draft, he had cemented his legacy as one of the greatest dual-threat quarterbacks in college football history. His college career had been a roller coaster of highs and lows, benchings, transfers, redemption. But through it all, one thing remained constant. Jalen Hurts was a leader, a competitor, and above all, a winner. Now, with his sights set on the NFL, he was ready for the next chapter of his journey. Heading into the 2020 NFL Draft, Jalen Hurts remained one of the most polarizing quarterback prospects in his class. Despite a stellar senior season at Oklahoma, where he threw for over 3,800 yards and 32 touchdowns, while rushing for nearly 1,300 yards and 20 scores, doubts still lingered about his ability to transition successfully into the NFL. Scouts and analysts continued to question his mechanics, arm strength, and ability to process complex defenses at the professional level. Some even suggested that his future in the NFL might not be as a quarterback, with speculation that he could be converted into a running back or wide receiver due to his athleticism. Despite these lingering doubts, Hurts approached the pre-draft process with the same determination that had fueled him throughout his career. At the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine, he impressed in nearly every physical test, posting a 4.59-second 40-yard dash, one of the fastest times among quarterbacks in recent years. His explosive athleticism was further confirmed by his standout performances in the vertical jump and broad jump, ranking near the top in those categories as well. However, while his athletic ability was undeniable, his throwing session did little to erase concerns about his accuracy and consistency. As the draft approached, the consensus was that Hurts would likely be selected in the second or third round, with many teams viewing him as a high-upside developmental prospect rather than a day-one starter. The first round of the draft played out as expected, with 4 quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, and Jordan Love, coming off the board. Hurts, despite his impressive college resume, remained available. The second round progressed, and teams continued to pass on him. Then, with the 53rd overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles made the surprising decision to select Jalen Hurts. The reaction was immediate and not particularly positive. Eagles fans were caught off guard, as the team had just signed their supposed franchise quarterback, Carson Wentz, to a 4-year, $128 million contract the previous offseason. Philadelphia had far greater roster needs, particularly at wide receiver and on defense, making the decision to draft a quarterback in the second round all the more confusing. Analysts and media personalities were equally critical of the move, with some questioning whether the Eagles had just created a quarterback controversy. Mel Kiper Jr. called it the most shocking pick of the draft, while former NFL quarterback Dan Orlovsky criticized the decision, stating, "You don't spend a second-round pick on a guy unless you think he's going to play." Even former Eagles players voiced their confusion on social media, with some wondering if this selection meant that Philadelphia was losing faith in Wentz. Within the Eagles organization, there appeared to be no clear consensus on the move. General Manager Howie Roseman defended the pick by saying the Eagles were a quarterback factory, and that securing depth at the position was always a priority. Head coach Doug Peterson echoed those sentiments, suggesting that Hurts could be a valuable backup and an insurance policy if Wentz got injured. But behind the scenes, the situation was far more complicated. While some within the organization saw Hurts as a long-term project, others believed his selection sent the wrong message to Wentz, who was already struggling with confidence issues. For Hurts, the pick meant another uphill battle. Unlike the quarterbacks taken before him, he wasn't being handed the keys to a franchise. Instead, he was stepping into a situation where he wasn't even expected to compete for the starting job. In his rookie season, he was used sparingly, primarily in special packages that took advantage of his athleticism. The Eagles would occasionally line him up in gadget plays, using him in designed QB runs or as a decoy. This only reinforced the narrative that he wasn't seen as a true quarterback, but rather a utility player who could contribute in a limited role. Despite the limited playing time, Hurts continued to work tirelessly behind the scenes, studying the playbook, refining his mechanics, and preparing himself for the moment when his number would eventually be called. That moment came sooner than expected. As the Eagles' 2020 season unraveled, Carson Wentz struggled mightily, throwing interceptions at an alarming rate and looking increasingly uncomfortable behind a battered offensive line. With the team sitting at 3-8-1, Peterson made the bold decision to bench Wentz in favor of Hurts during a Week 13 game against the Green Bay Packers. When Hurts took the field, he immediately provided a spark. His mobility allowed him to evade pressure in ways Wentz could not, and his confidence gave the offense a newfound energy. The following week, in his first career start, Hurts led the Eagles to a stunning upset victory over the New Orleans Saints, a team that boasted one of the league's top defenses. He threw for 167 yards, rushed for 106 yards, and showcased the playmaking ability that had made him a star in college. Over the next few weeks, Hurts continued to flash potential, even as the Eagles struggled to find consistency. His performance wasn't perfect, his accuracy remained inconsistent at times, and he still had room to grow as a passer, but his leadership, poise, and ability to extend plays made it clear that he had the tools to be an NFL quarterback. By the end of the season, the Eagles had a full-blown quarterback controversy on their hands. Wentz, frustrated by his benching, reportedly requested a trade, and Philadelphia ultimately decided to move on from their former franchise quarterback, dealing him to the Indianapolis Colts in the offseason. With Wentz gone, Hurts suddenly found himself as the Eagles' presumed starter heading into the 2021 season. Once again, Jalen Hurts had taken an uncertain situation and turned it into an opportunity. He had been doubted, dismissed, and overlooked countless times in his career, yet he had consistently found a way to rise above the criticism. Now, With the chance to prove himself as the leader of an NFL franchise, the real test was only just beginning. Jalen Hurts entered the NFL facing skepticism at every turn. Despite his impressive college career and dynamic playmaking ability, he was buried on the Philadelphia Eagles depth chart, listed as the third-string quarterback behind Carson Wentz and veteran Nate Sudfeld. Many within the organization still viewed him as a developmental project rather than a legitimate future starter. Early in the 2020 season, the Eagles deployed Hurts in special packages, using him primarily as a runner or a decoy rather than as a traditional quarterback. This only fueled the doubts surrounding his passing ability. Was he just another athletic gadget player, destined for a limited role in the NFL? Could he ever develop into a true franchise quarterback? However, as the Eagles' season spiraled out of control, everything changed. Carson Wentz, once the face of the franchise, regressed dramatically. He struggled with accuracy, turnovers, and decision-making, leading the NFL in interceptions and sacks taken. Philadelphia's offense looked lifeless, and head coach Doug Peterson was under immense pressure to make a change. By week 13, Peterson made the bold decision to bench Wentz in favor of Hurts, giving the rookie his first significant opportunity. His first real test? A matchup against the New Orleans Saints, a team riding a 9-game winning streak with one of the best defenses in the league. Hurts took the field with confidence and immediately provided a spark. His mobility and poise under pressure gave the Eagles' offense a much-needed boost. He led Philadelphia to a shocking 24-21 victory over the Saints, becoming the first quarterback in NFL history to rush for 100-plus yards in his first start against a top-ranked defense. Suddenly, the narrative surrounding Hurts began to shift. Over his next 3 starts, he continued to flash elite potential, putting up impressive numbers. Against the Cardinals, he threw for 338 yards and 3 touchdowns, while rushing for 63 yards and another score in a thrilling 33-26 loss. The following week, he passed for 342 yards against the Cowboys but struggled with turnovers as the Eagles fell 37-17. In the season finale against Washington, he threw for 2 touchdowns and rushed for 34 yards before being controversially benched in the fourth quarter by Peterson, a move that infuriated players and fans alike. In just 4 starts, Hurts amassed 1,061 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, and 354 rushing yards with 3 rushing scores. Though the Eagles finished the season 4-11-1, Hurts had undeniably injected new life into the team. His ability to extend plays, read defenses, and make dynamic plays outside the pocket gave Philadelphia hope. Despite his flashes of brilliance, questions persisted. Some analysts still saw him as a temporary solution, a bridge quarterback rather than a franchise cornerstone. Could he refine his mechanics? Could he improve his accuracy and decision-making under pressure? Philadelphia's front office was also in chaos. The Eagles fired Doug Peterson, and reports surfaced of a fractured relationship between Wentz and the organization. As rumors swirled, Wentz was eventually traded to the Indianapolis Colts, leaving Hurts as the presumed starter. Even with Wentz gone, speculation continued. With the 6th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, many believe the Eagles might select another quarterback, potentially replacing Hurts before he even had a chance to prove himself. However, the team instead selected Heisman Trophy-winning wide receiver Devonta Smith, Hurts' former Alabama teammate. This was a clear vote of confidence, at least for now. The Eagles were giving Hurts an opportunity to lead the team, but he would have to earn his place as the long-term answer. Under new head coach Nick Sirianni, Hurts officially took over as the Eagles' full-time starting quarterback in the 2021 season. The year started with an electric Week 1 performance, as Hurts torched the Atlanta Falcons, throwing for 3 touchdowns and posting a 126.4 passer rating in a dominant 32-6 victory. However, the season proved to be a roller coaster ride. Hurts continued to showcase his strengths as a dual-threat playmaker, but also experienced growing pains as a passer. His mechanics remained inconsistent, and at times, he struggled with deep ball accuracy and decision-making. Despite the ups and downs, Hurts steadily improved as the season progressed. He finished the year with 3,144 passing yards, 16 touchdowns to just 9 interceptions, and 784 rushing yards with 10 rushing touchdowns, ranking first among all quarterbacks. More importantly, he led the Eagles to a 9-8 record, clinching a wild-card playoff berth in his first full season as a starter. Though the Eagles exceeded expectations by making the playoffs, Hurts faced another major test in the postseason, a wild-card matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and legendary quarterback Tom Brady. The game quickly turned into a nightmare for Philadelphia. Hurts struggled against Tampa Bay's relentless pass rush, completing just 53.5% of his passes for 258 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He also lost a crucial fumble as the Buccaneers dominated 31-15. The criticism intensified once again. Pundits questioned whether Hurts could truly lead a team deep into the playoffs. Some analysts speculated that the Eagles might look to replace him in the 2022 offseason, either through the draft or via trade for a veteran quarterback. Despite the playoff struggles, Hurts remained undeterred. He took accountability for the loss, vowing to return stronger and more prepared in 2022. Instead of letting the doubters define him, he embraced the challenge, just as he had done at Alabama and Oklahoma. The Eagles' front office noticed his work ethic. Rather than moving on from Hurts, they committed to building around him, making key offseason moves to bolster the roster. They traded for star wide receiver A.J. Brown, giving Hurts an elite weapon alongside Devonta Smith. They also strengthened the offensive line and defense, signaling that they believed Hurts could lead the team forward. Hurts was now at a career crossroads. He had silenced doubters before, but now the biggest test of his career lay ahead. Could he take the next step and prove that he was more than just a dynamic athlete? Could he develop into a legitimate franchise quarterback capable of leading the Eagles to Super Bowl contention? His response would come in the 2022 season, and it would be nothing short of spectacular. Jalen Hurts entered the 2022 season with enormous expectations. The previous year had been a proving ground. He had led the Eagles to the playoffs, shown clear improvement as a passer, and established himself as one of the most dangerous dual-threat quarterbacks in the league. But for many analysts and fans, there were still doubts. Some labeled him a game manager, a quarterback who relied too heavily on his legs and wasn't capable of consistently winning with his arm. Others dismissed him as a product of a strong offensive system rather than a true franchise quarterback. The pressure was mounting, but Hurts, as always, thrived in the face of adversity. The Eagles' front office, however, believed in their young signal caller. General Manager Howie Roseman made a bold statement by aggressively upgrading the roster around him. He had posted a solid but unspectacular regular season, and critics continued to question whether he could elevate his play when it mattered most. But just as he had done throughout his career, Hurts delivered in the biggest moments. In the wild card round against the Green Bay Packers, he led the Eagles to a 22-10 victory with a poised, error-free performance. Though his stats weren't eye-popping, he made the right reads, controlled the tempo of the game, and kept the offense moving. Against the Los Angeles Rams in the divisional round, Barkley stole the spotlight with a dominant rushing performance, but Hurts made several clutch third-down throws that kept critical drives alive. His composure in high-pressure moments was evident, and Philadelphia advanced to the NFC Championship game. There, in a matchup against their division rival Washington Commanders, the Eagles' offense finally exploded. They put up a staggering 55 points in a dominant victory, with Hurts throwing for 3 touchdowns and rushing for another. It was a statement game, not just for the Eagles, but for Hurts himself. He had silenced the doubters once again, proving that he was more than just a system quarterback. His leadership, resilience, and playmaking ability had carried Philadelphia to its second Super Bowl appearance in 3 years. As the Eagles prepared to take the biggest stage in football once again, one thing was clear: Jalen Hurts was built for this moment. Through every setback, every criticism, and every challenge, he had continued to prove one thing. He was a leader, a warrior, and most importantly, a winner. The story of his career was far from finished, and if the past was any indication, his best was still yet to come. With Hurts under center, it was an emphatic statement. In just 4 seasons as a starter, he had led the Eagles to multiple conference championships and Super Bowl appearances. No other quarterback from his draft class, not even first overall pick Joe Burrow, could match that level of team success. What makes Hurts' playoff performances even more impressive is how he has responded to adversity. After the disappointment of the 2023 wild card loss to Tampa Bay, many quarterbacks would have been rattled. But Hurts displayed the same resilience he showed when benched at Alabama. He came back stronger, more focused, and more determined than ever. In a league that